Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Delighted to see so many participants. That's great. My name is David Wilkie. I work for the Wildlife Conservation Society, and I run our Rights and Communities program within WCS. And Jonathan is?
Yeah, I'm Jonathan Palmer. I lead WCS's Conservation Technology program, which is focused on ensuring all our field programs have the tools they need to execute on their mission. And as part of that, I lead on the technology for the Conservation Social Science Partnership.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen and let's get started talking about Conservation Social Science Partnership. Hopefully everyone can see the Conservation Social Science Partnership with a beautiful kingfisher on the slide. Great.
Yep.
So part of this presentation is about why did we think we needed a Conservation Social Science Partnership? What was the need for a new organization? And I think part of that rationale was that conservation social science as a way of providing information to help decision making in a conservation context has typically been challenging. Collecting data, managing data, analyzing data, and producing results that can inform policy and practice, I think in the conservation science arena has typically been seen as complicated, costly, and definitely not quick. And part of the idea of the Conservation Social Science Partnership was not to necessarily emulate natural science, but to look over the fence at natural science and conservation and see what they're doing and see if there's anything relevant to what social science and conservation is thinking about. And in recent years, natural science data collection has exploded in its use of technology. So that image that you see, that photograph, actually contains a red brocket deer. If you look at the left-hand side of the image, you might see the hind legs and the tail of a red brocket deer. Well, that animal was identified by artificial intelligence. It wasn't identified by a human being. And the speed at which camera trap data like this can be analyzed using good technology has just transformed the way natural scientists are able to count critters using camera trap data. The same goes for using remote sensing image analysis to tell us something interesting about ecosystem quality and extent, whether it's the changes in tree cover over time, whether it's the extent and intensity of annual fires across the planet, or it's something to do with the quality and quantity and extent of coral reef systems around the planet. The natural scientists have been using technology really cleverly to try and make advances in their ability to generate information that's useful for conservation decision making. And really, that got a lot of us to think about how could we take social science information that we currently gather. And this is just a brief set of examples of different types of social science data. How could we use technology to make it easier for us to gather these data and generate results that help us make better decisions? And it was really that desire to generate conservation social science information quicker, cheaper, more efficiently, so we could really improve the outcomes of conservation that drove this group of NGOs and universities and individuals to come together and say, we need a partnership to try and share our best practices, share our understanding, and push conservation social science into the 21st century. So our mission is really simple. We want to promote, facilitate, and coordinate the use of effective and ethical social science to make better conservation decisions. A nice and simple mission statement for a partnership. And one of the big things that we're doing is developing technological tools to help us really speed up the process of gathering good quality, ethically undertaken social science. Jonathan?
Great. So yeah, I'll just go through some of the areas we've been developing or adopting tools and technology for ConSoSci. Again, we've had the advantage of learning from partnerships like Wildlife Insights, like SMART and others, to learn from their best practice. And so what we've done is take tools that were out there widely adopted and figure out how to optimize their use. So one of the main things we've done is support the move from paper to digital forms using Kobo Toolbox. Beyond that, we've built this stack here. Maybe looks a little complicated, but it's actually fairly easy. There's 3 parts to it. On the left-hand side, you have the Kobo Toolbox part, the form library, the data collection, and the data aggregation. What that is a set of standard forms and questions to allow people to collect data. So we have, for example, in the areas David showed earlier, we have a standard form for collecting basic necessities data or offtake data. We also have standard questions so that if someone's creating a new form, they don't have to figure out a typology for each question, they can pull those over. Secondly, there's a data collection, again, out of the box from Kobo Toolbox. Thirdly, Kobo Toolbox provides some initial data aggregation. So you can have multiple people collecting the same data. They see the data they've collected, but then one other person is allowed to see all the data from multiple researchers aggregated. That's one part of our effort. A second part of our effort is this tool in the middle called OpenFN. It's the square box with FN in the middle. And what that does is it allows us to transform and integrate the data. It also provides some other services. It allows us to back up our data and take snapshots of any piece of data. And then OpenFN allows us to either push our data over into ConSoSci Connect, a platform we're building to support the visualization of data, and any other database of your choice. Understanding that a lot of organizations have their own databases or there are collaborations that people work on where they have to push the data over. So we've built this technology stack to manage data over its full life cycle with a Kobo Toolbox section on the left, a little tool in the middle, kind of middleware called OpenFN that helps us pull that data, transform it and push it out, as well as back it up and take timestamps of it. And then tools on the left that allow people to review. Kobo Toolbox is 100% free. It's cross-platform, user-friendly. We have out-of-the-box surveys, and it's tried and tested for the field. It has all the features that we need, including offline, including support for multiple languages, including meeting the requirements we have for protecting personally identifiable information. Next slide, David. The cool thing about what we've done with Kobo Toolbox is we've built a suite of customizable template surveys. So you have these standard surveys, but they're all extensible. So you can add additional questions to it or add to your list of categories. 10 years ago, it was an open question. Now the evidence is compelling. With mobile data collection, it's faster, it's less error prone, and it's more secure. From there, we take those over and we push those through OpenFN, through the aggregation integration tool, into our online databases. And so, for example, for the basic necessities survey on livelihoods, we now have a suite of 50 visualizations of that data. As soon as someone finishes collecting their data, within seconds, not even minutes, we basically have the initial analysis of all that data complete. Next slide, David. Again, we're still in early days with a coalition, even though we have a set of products really delivered already. This is actually about a month old. So the second point around the automated data mapping is also completed. And so next month, we're releasing ConSoSci Connect, which is that tool on the right-hand side with the automatic visualizations. We'll basically be piloting that over the summer, reviewing in September, with a view towards the end of this year, releasing version 1 of the right-hand side of that technology. That's the visualization. One other thing to flag is those 3 components, that data collection, that aggregation, and then the visualization on the right. An organization can use either just the first part, the first and the second, or the first, second, and the third. So if an organization wants to collect data, map it over an OpenFN, but push it into their own database and not use our visualization tools, that can work as well. So we've created not only an easy to use stack, but a stack that is flexible and can adapt to the needs of the organizations. Thank you, Jonathan.
So building the right tool, making great tools, using great use of technology is one of the driving reasons that the partnership came together. The second was to really try and figure out what sort of social science capacity building was needed within the conservation community. Certainly at the Wildlife Conservation Society, many of our field staff are trained natural scientists, not trained social scientists. So one thing that we really thought that ConSoSci needed to do was to get a handle on what capacity gaps existed. So early in the genesis of ConSoSci, Diane de Tuff and others put together a survey that they pushed out across the conservation community to get a better sense of really what currently is being used in terms of conservation science, social science data collection, and what are the sort of capacity gaps. That resulted in a really good assessment across a broad swath of the conservation community about what are people currently using and what are the human capital needs within the conservation community to really help with training and capacity building. I forgot to put a slide in. We had a great group of students in the UK did some work for us in the early part of this year, where they looked a deep dive on the web for conservation social science training materials that were already available, and they compiled a fantastic database on that. At the moment, ConSoSci has a series of COBO Toolbox manuals available in 5 different languages. That we have an online COBO technical training process, which has been, each of the trainings is recorded and is now available on YouTube. And Jonathan and the OpenFN team have also run a series of technical trainings on how to take these data, how to use the scripts that OpenFN develops, how to take those, use those to pull data out of COBO Toolbox and pop them into online cloud-based databases, either ones that you already use or to create brand new ones that if you haven't got a database available. Let me quickly talk about membership. Really, this is a members organization. This organization works because the members are committed to it and they invest their time in developing the ideas and actually getting the work done. And I think that if anyone is interested in becoming a member, it's really important. It's your enthusiasm, your engagement with social science in the context of conservation, which will make and does make the Conservation Social Science Partnership work. There are 2 types of members. There's general membership, and that's most of the members would be our general members. The only difference between general membership and lead organization membership is that the lead membership does typically provide some kind of contribution to the partnership, and they are members of a steering committee which helps guide the present and future of the partnership. Currently we have a series of working groups where representatives from members figure out what they need to do in order to advance each of these working groups. And the real benefits of membership are that you do get to have your say on where Conservation Social Science Partnership, what are the priorities? Where should it go? What should it do? It's an amazing opportunity. Membership allows for members to share their best practices from their organizations with others. It helps guide the direction of the organization. It helps make a growing community of practice, which is really trying to help social science advance more quickly than it has done, I think, in the last 20 years. So that was a very quick overview of Conservation Social Science Partnership. It's a little over a year old. We've done, I think, some pretty remarkable things, getting Kobo Toolbox training materials available. All the partners are sharing their social surveys on Kobo Toolbox. And the ConSoSci Connect concept has advanced well enough that, as Jonathan says, we will have a pilot sometime in the next couple of months and a launch of conservation social science technology at the end of the year, which is pretty good for a young organization. So Sarah, let's open it to the floor for any questions.
Absolutely. So we have a first question about OpenFN as an alternative to Tableau, and sorry if I say this wrong, PowerBI or PowerBI, and whether it's cheaper and more useful. I don't know if either of you know more about those other services as well.
Jonathan, help me on that.
Sure. So Power BI and Tableau, they're visualization toolkits, and they kind of go on the right-hand side. If you remember that stack where we had the data collection, the integration, and then the visualization. So Power BI, Tableau is basically a visualization toolkit. And the reason we're creating sort of ConSoSci Connect with visualizations in is because for some people, even something like Tableau and Power BI are too complex, and we want to have something that is open source, that can be deployed, and that is free. If you have an organization that is using Power BI, or a member of staff who's really keen on Tableau, you could certainly use some other database and then do your visualizations in Power BI or Tableau and still use all of our stack. What OpenFN does is not a visualization toolkit. It's helpful to think about it in terms of this idea of middleware, something that glues things together. So you don't have a connector from Power BI to Kobo Toolbox. You can't go open up Tableau and say, give me your Kobo data. But what we can do with OpenFN is basically have OpenFN pull data from Tableau, from Kobo Toolbox, pull data and put it into any other database. Whether your organization uses SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, or any other destination, we can push it over to a location where ConSoSci Connect, Power BI, or Tableau can reach it. So that's in terms of the technical side. In terms of the cost, again, in terms of cash cost, Power BI obviously has a licensing cost. Tableau has a licensing cost. The technology we're building with ConSoSci, our goal is to make everything free at the point of use. We know conservation dollars are limited, and even where there's a few pennies to go around, procurement is not easy. And so we've built a solution where ConSoSci Connect is open source and can be deployed.
So one of the visions of ConSoSci Partnership is that we're not trying to get everyone right tomorrow to necessarily use the same surveys and the same approach. What we are doing is encouraging all the partners to make their surveys available to others. So if you are a small NGO in Benin and you want to do a livelihood survey, you could find that livelihood survey on the ConSoSci website. You could modify it, you could use it, and that would save you a ton of development costs, a ton of recreating the wheel. The idea is to make, we've all generated lots of very clever surveys, and the nice thing about ConSoSci Partnership is all of the partners are really keen to share what they've already developed. And I think that for small NGOs, for college students, I think this is will be a huge resource, which will just change the way that we think about developing surveys for social science in the context of conservation. And then, of course, ConSoSci Connect enables you to use your data in a much more efficient and quick way. I don't know many of you, but when I first gathered my data, it was all on paper. Sometimes it took me 2.5 years to input my PhD data and another 6 months to analyze it. With ConSoSci Connect, once you've come out of the field and you've gathered your data on a tablet, as soon as it hits a Wi-Fi signal or a mobile signal, the data move out off your tablet into Kobo Toolbox. They then be grabbed by OpenFN, and they're in the database ready to be analyzed and visualized. So a huge transformation in the transaction costs of inputting, analyzing, and visualizing the results of social science data.
Cool. There's another question in the chat, difference between Survey 123 and Kobo Toolbox. Survey 123 is Esri's mobile data collection toolkit. Again, a fantastic toolkit. Again, if an organization has paid for licenses for that and they're using that as a tool, it's a great tool. What we're trying to do is create a suite of tools that are free at the point of use and where we can easily share standard forms. I think another question, David, maybe more for you, but I can start to answer the question of do we have any members from the funder community? I think we're in some early stage discussions, but we don't have a big donor behind us at the moment, unless you've got more news, David. But I think at the moment we've pooled our resources and come a long way with that. David, do you want to talk to that one?
Yeah, I've been talking to two family foundations, and the Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies and Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. They're really excited about what we're proposing to do, or what we actually are doing, as are several folks in the Forestry and Biodiversity team at USAID. I think that this whole initiative, many conservation funders have been delighted the way they've seen the natural sciences become more technologically savvy, and I think that the same conservation funders have already stated that they see this as a great advance in generating high quality, ethically gathered social science data for conservation.
Great. Some more questions just about well, you answered in the chat that the resources that you spoke about will be available on the website, and Deanne added that there are already recordings of online trainings on the YouTube channel. But when will these resources be available on the website?
So we're in the final stages. We should have been there actually just in time for this meeting, but we're a little bit behind. So we're in the final stages of finalizing the website. So later this month, I think an announcement will go out through the listserv for this group with links to the website where we'll have access to all the tools and the resources we've mentioned today.
Great. If anyone has any further questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll read them out.
If anyone on this on this webinar would be interested in learning more about the regular meetings that members have, about the potential for membership, do please get in touch with me, and I'll just put my email address here. And we'd be delighted to chat. As I said, if we pull this off, I think it will be an absolutely amazing thing for the conservation community to be able to generate social science information quickly and move it into the sort of conservation decision-making sphere, which will be fantastic. Yes, the human rights, human subjects protections, we'll certainly have it very clear about how we're going to manage privacy issues around social science data, and that will be on the website as well.
Cool. And Matrida's asking some questions there. Yeah, so Cobalt Toolbox is ODK compliant, and so does OpenFN support that. We will look at supporting other mobile data collection apps over time. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting time, as David says. We've seen how we've been able, not just with the technology, but with probably more importantly with the best practice, with building the community of practice, we've been able to scale the impact of in law enforcement, in biological monitoring. And I think now is this time to do this with social science. And I think early on we had a few people asking, well, can we do this? Isn't social science so unique and so special? And it is special, and there is a uniqueness to it. But I think we've been really amazed with what the community's already pulled together. And we feel sort of 1, 2, 3 years from now, we're all going to be so excited about the scale of the impact of the ConSoSci partnership.
Yeah, and Emily had a question about what's the ethical part of this, and as social science data is really relies on interviewing and engaging and working with people, we have to be very careful that we ensure that people who are willing to talk with us and provide information provide their consent for us to do that. Any photographs or video, we need to get consent for that too. And we need to make sure that they understand that if any time they want to cease to participate in a survey or in data collection, they have the right to do that, and that their names will never be used or never made public as part of the data analysis and publication. So these are sort of standard ethics, human subjects ethical considerations that most social scientists need to comply with, both for ethical reasons and more commonly these days, most journals now require that you have had your research, your surveys have been reviewed by an institutional review board in the US or an ethical review board in many other places. Emily, did that help?
Yes. And there's a follow-up on this about, have you run into any issues with IRBs regarding sharing the data via the framework?
No, because we do anonymize the data. And that's a sort of standard practice in conservation social science. Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to add a few points as well here. So one is, by having these standard forms, library of forms, we're actually able to support organizations to be able to go to their IRBs and say, well, look, here's a standard survey that WWF has already done, and it's been reviewed by their IRB, which helps organizations like us, but also helps smaller organizations that may not have an IRB, but they can basically leverage the IRBs of larger organizations by using those forms. One thing I probably should have made a little bit clearer in terms of this stack is ConSoSci Connect is an application you can deploy on your own servers, or you can deploy in the cloud. it's not that you, by using the ConSoSci toolkit, you need to have all your data flowing into WCSs or TNCs or any one of the partners' databases. You can have your own databases. As a partnership, ConSoSci is not storing any of that data. We are supporting our partners to manage their own data, or where partners have a collaboration and they want to put data in a common repository to do that. But there is nothing in what we're doing that channels people into shared data. That's something that we want to support people to do if it's a priority, but equally, we want to support organizations to manage their own data. There was another question about comparing and contrasting data. Again, maybe that needs a bit more of a detailed discussion. The comparing and contrasting data, we've built some tools for doing that within ConSoSci Connect by, for example, for our livelihoods, our basic necessities survey, allowing you to look at trends over time or between locations.
And this is to John. Hi, John. How are you doing? Yes, there is. We're always concerned about divulging information that could jeopardize the safety and security of both people and animals. So when we gather data on camera trap data on tigers, we have to be very careful not to divulge where those camera trap data were collected, because basically that would be an advert for anyone who wants to illegally capture tigers. And with human subjects data, again, we're exceedingly careful. And this is all of the partners who are involved in ConSoSci Partnership are very much aware of making sure that any data that they're using, that they wish to go public, has to be sufficiently geographically anonymized and down to sort of individual subjects. So that can limit some of the analyses you can do. But if, for our perspective, the risks to the subjects, it is what's most important when you're to minimize that when you're making a data set public. John, does that help?
It does. I guess I'm just a little surprised. One of the things I've had to kind of adjust in working with social scientists is their perception of what's a risk to somebody is very different. So they're often not concerned about just physical risks, like you said, but like, well, what's the risk of mental harm or being upset or embarrassment? And so that's where like some of the discussions I've had with IRBs, like literally they're like, well, even if it's anonymous, what if somebody could figure out and kind of de-aggregate or de-anonymize this? Doesn't that pose risk to this person who might not want somebody to know what their whatever, like home office location is, or not even that, even like their job grade or something? I don't know, I guess I've just been surprised how things that to me seem very benign from some people, it's almost like an HR perspective where any data, the default is no data should be shared and you have to have a justification. So like, I love what you're doing, and it's great that you're not having some of the same barriers I've hit. I've just kind of become very twitchy from whenever I talk to social scientists or IRBs. I've been assuming that things will be harder than I expect.
Yeah, and Emily, that's totally right. And we take we take it really serious. I'm a member of the WCS Institutional Review Board, and when we do reviews of our research proposals, keeping identity secure is one of the most important things, because if my wife is interviewed and she tells the interviewer about all the other jobs that she has that she's not telling me about, all the money she's making, I don't want she doesn't want me to know about that. So I totally get that. And Emily, yes, I do not like the idea of what I call conservation tourism, which is conservation organizations blasting out into a village and jumping out and gathering data and then zipping back to the capital city. In WCS, it's incredibly important for us, for the long-term support of communities and having communities as allies to build trusting relationships with communities. And so, yes, I completely agree with you that for us, it's very often we co-develop surveys with the communities because it's something that they want to know about. And so it's not us coming in and saying, we're going to gather these data and then we disappear with the data. It's much more like we're interested in some data. Are these data interesting to you? You would like to gather this. Let's do this together. And it's basically our collective information. And so, yeah, I completely get that, Emily.
Yeah, and I would add to that this, the idea of ConSoSci sharing best practice openly. A lot of what we're doing in ConSoSci is to kind of not make social science an exclusive activity, not make it an activity that is so complex and so difficult that someone from the outside has to do everything. The idea is that a lot of social science, if it's basic survey collection, basic analysis of things like livelihoods data, with the right tools, is relatively simple and doesn't need the big expert from the outside. And so I think, one thing ConSoSci will do, it will actually democratize social science in a lot of ways for our project, all of our collective projects around the world.
Cool.
Great. And David, it looks like you responded in the chat, but just a question about, I guess I'll make it more broad. Will there be frameworks for specific types of surveys that an organization can use to adapt to their work, like the painted dog conservation in Africa?
Yes. So I think one of the early slides in the presentation were just a few kinds of examples of social science information that conservation organizations typically gather. So attitude surveys is one of them, consumption surveys, well-being surveys. So whether hunting and fishing, so offtake. So how much, there's a whole series of those types of surveys, and different organizations within the partnership have structured surveys in different ways. So it's not simply that there's a survey for well-being. There's several different ways to go about this. And so the nice thing about the partnership is it offers a range of different ways to ask similar questions, because in some contexts, one survey would be appropriate. In another context, a different survey might be appropriate. But the idea is to make all of these surveys freely available to the public.
Great. Do you have any more questions? Going once? Going twice? Okay, well, without any other questions here for us, we will adjourn a bit early from 4 o'clock. So thank you so much to David and Jonathan for a fantastic presentation. I'm really looking forward to getting involved myself, and I hope the rest of you are as well. David, I think you put your email in the chat, but if you're willing to share that with this group, I can also send it in our follow-up email with the recording link and any other materials that we might want to share.
That would be great.
Great. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the presentation today, and be on the lookout for an email from me with the recording link and for any other upcoming webinars you might be interested in joining from the CMP. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.